The pharmacy counter used to be a place of certainty. You walked in with a prescription, handed over a piece of paper, and walked out with the medication that kept you alive. That simple transaction, repeated millions of times each day across America, represented something deeper than commerce. It was a promise. A guarantee that the pills your heart needed, the insulin that regulated your blood sugar, the medications that kept your mind stable, would always be there when you needed them. That promise is breaking. Across the United States, pharmacists are having conversations they never thought they'd need to have. We're out of stock. It's on back order. Try us again next week. What sounds like a minor inconvenience is quietly becoming a national crisis. The medications that millions of Americans depend on to stay alive are disappearing from shelves, not because of a natural disaster or a sudden emergency, but because of a system that's slowly, methodically failing. In 2024, the FDA reported over 4,000 drug shortages. By 2025, that number climbed past 5,500. Early data from 2026 suggests we're heading towards 7,000 or more. These aren't just rare, exotic treatments. They are the everyday medications that power modern American life. Blood pressure pills that prevent heart attacks, insulin that keeps diabetics functioning, antidepressants that hold families together, pain medications that make recovery possible. The question isn't whether your medication will be affected. The question is when. Walk into any pharmacy in small-town America today, and you'll see the warning signs. Shelves that used to overflow with options now display apologetic signs. Temporarily unavailable. Manufacturer delay? Expected back soon. The pharmacists behind the counter wear expressions that mix frustration with genuine fear. They know what's coming, but they can't say it out loud. Take Sarah Martinez, a 54-year-old teacher from Akron, Ohio. For 8 years, she's managed her type 2 diabetes with the same insulin prescription, the same pharmacy, the same routine, every month, like clockwork. Then, in November 2025, everything changed. "I'm sorry," the pharmacist told her. "We don't have it, and I don't know when we will." Sarah spent the next 6 days driving between pharmacies across 3 counties. CVS was out. Walgreens was out. The independent pharmacy her family had used for 20 years was out. Finally, at a Walmart 40 miles from her home, she found 2 vials. Enough for 6 weeks. "I felt like I was hunting for food," she later said, "except I was hunting for something to keep me alive." Sarah's experience isn't unusual. It's becoming the new normal. The insulin shortage hit quietly but devastically. 3 companies control roughly 90% of the global insulin supply: Eli Lilly, Novo Nordisk, and Sanofi. When production hiccups hit any one of them, the ripple effects spread nationwide within weeks. Manufacturing delays at a single facility in Indiana can leave diabetics in Florida scrambling for medication. Quality control issues at a plant in France can empty pharmacy shelves in Texas. But insulin is just the beginning. Blood pressure medications are disappearing at an alarming rate. ACE inhibitors, the gold standard treatment for hypertension, have been in chronic shortage since early 2025. Lisinopril, taken by over 15 million Americans, became nearly impossible to find in many regions. Amlodipine, another cornerstone medication, followed soon after. The result is predictable and terrifying. Patients who've kept their blood pressure controlled for decades are suddenly left without their medication. Emergency room visits for hypertensive crises have jumped 23% in the past year. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a cardiologist in Phoenix, has watched the crisis unfold firsthand. "I'm seeing patients I haven't worried about in years," she explains. "People whose blood pressure was perfectly controlled, coming in with readings of 180 over 1 in 10. They're scared, they're angry, and honestly, I don't know what to tell them." The pattern repeats across every category of essential medication. Generic drugs, the affordable backbone of American healthcare, are vanishing fastest. Manufacturers simply can't make money producing pills that cost pennies to make, but require millions of dollars in regulatory compliance. When profit margins disappear, so do the medications. Depression medications tell the same story. Sertraline, better known as Zoloft, treats over 50 million Americans. Supply disruptions in 2025 left many patients unable to fill their prescriptions for weeks. Anyone who's ever tried to stop antidepressants abruptly knows what happens next. Brain zaps, mood swings, anxiety that feels like drowning. Some patients ended up in emergency rooms. Others simply stopped trying. The human cost is mounting, but it's often invisible. When someone can't find their diabetes medication, they don't collapse immediately. When blood pressure pills run out, the heart attack might come months later. The connection between the empty pharmacy shelf and the cardiac arrest is real, but it's hard to trace. The system is failing in slow motion. The casualties are scattered and quiet. Behind the scenes, the pharmaceutical supply chain is more fragile than most Americans realize. The majority of generic drugs sold in the United States are manufactured overseas. India produces about 40% of America's generic medications. China supplies the raw materials for another 80% of active pharmaceutical ingredients. When COVID-19 shut down factories in Mumbai or Wuhan, the impact rippled through American medicine cabinets months later. But international supply chains are just part of the problem. The real issue runs deeper into the economics of medication manufacturing itself. Generic drugs are supposed to be cheap. That's the point. But cheap has consequences. When a medication's patent expires, dozens of companies rush in to manufacture generic versions. Competition drives prices down to rock bottom. Eventually, many manufacturers simply walk away. The profit isn't worth the headache. What's left is a fragile system supported by just a handful of companies. When one plant shuts down for maintenance, when one company exits the market, when one quality control issue surfaces, the entire supply for a medication can disappear overnight. The FDA does what it can. It maintains a drug shortage database. It expedites approvals for new manufacturers. It works with companies to prevent shortages before they happen. But the agency is essentially trying to manage a crisis that's built into the system itself. As long as medications are treated as commodities rather than essential infrastructure, shortages will continue. Some hospitals have responded by stockpiling medications, but hoarding creates its own problems. When hospitals buy up extra supplies, pharmacies run short faster. When pharmacies can't fill prescriptions, patients panic buy when they do find medication, making shortages worse. The psychological impact extends beyond the patients who can't find their pills. Knowing that your life-sustaining medication might not be available next month changes how you think about the future. It makes every prescription refill feel precarious. It turns routine pharmacy visits into anxiety-inducing expeditions. Margaret Thompson, 67, from rural Montana, knows this feeling well. She takes 3 medications for her heart condition. Over the past year, each has been in shortage at some point. You start calculating, she says. How many pills do I have left? What if I can't find more? Should I start cutting them in half? These are calculations no American should have to make. The economic impact is harder to quantify, but equally real. When patients can't find their regular medication, they often end up in emergency rooms. Those visits cost thousands of dollars and achieve nothing that a $10 prescription could have prevented. The American Hospital Association estimates that drug shortages cost the healthcare system over $15 billion annually. Most of that comes from more expensive treatments, longer hospital stays, and medical crises that could have been avoided. Healthcare providers are adapting in ways that would have seemed impossible just 5 years ago. Doctors now spend time each week checking which medications are actually available before writing prescriptions. Pharmacists have learned to substitute drugs on the fly, switching patients between different formulations or different medications entirely. Nurses and hospitals ration medications that were once abundant. The shortage crisis hits hardest in places that were already struggling. Rural hospitals and independent pharmacies operate on thin margins. When they can't get the medications their patients need, they lose business to larger competitors who might have better supply relationships. The result accelerates a trend that was already hollowing out healthcare in small-town America. Chain pharmacies have more leverage with manufacturers, but they're not immune. CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid all report ongoing struggles to maintain adequate stock levels for essential medications. Their solution has been to limit quantities dispensed and implement rationing systems that would have been unthinkable in the past. Patients who once received 90-day supplies now get 30 days at most. Some medications are limited to 2 weeks at a time. The rationing creates new problems. Patients have to make more trips to the pharmacy, taking time off work and burning gas. Insurance copays that might have applied once every 3 months now hit every few weeks. For patients on multiple medications, the financial impact adds up quickly. Behind each shortage is a story of cascading failures. When the only manufacturer of a critical medication shuts down production, the FDA scrambles to find alternatives. But approving new suppliers takes time, months, sometimes years. During that gap, patients simply go without, or doctors prescribe more expensive alternatives that may not work as well. Consider the ongoing shortage of amoxicillin, one of the most commonly prescribed antibiotics. When production issues hit the major manufacturers in late 2024, pediatric doses became almost impossible to find. Parents drove hundreds of miles searching for the pink liquid that could clear their child's ear infection. Some ended up using adult pills, crushing them up and guessing at dosages. Others simply went without treatment, hoping the infection would clear on its own. The ripple effects extend beyond individual patients. When first-line medications aren't available, doctors prescribe alternatives that may be more expensive, less effective, or carry higher risks of side effects. The entire treatment paradigm shifts based not on what's best for the patient, but on what's actually available. Mental health medications present particularly complex challenges. Many psychiatric drugs require careful dosage adjustments and can't be stopped abruptly without serious consequences. When these medications become unavailable, the impact on patients can be devastating. Suicide rates in areas affected by antidepressant shortages show concerning increases, though the connections are often hard to prove definitively. Looking ahead, the situation appears likely to worsen before it improves. Climate change is affecting pharmaceutical manufacturing in unexpected ways. Extreme weather events shut down production facilities. Rising temperatures affect the stability of certain medications during shipping. Water shortages impact manufacturing processes that require massive amounts of clean water. The pharmaceutical industry's response has been mixed. Some companies are investing in domestic manufacturing capabilities, recognizing that over-reliance on overseas production creates vulnerabilities. Others are simply exiting the generic drug market entirely, focusing on more profitable branded medications. Regulatory changes could help, but they take years to implement. The FDA has proposed expedited approval processes for manufacturers willing to produce shortage-prone medications. Congress has discussed legislation to require more transparency in the supply chain, but these are long-term solutions to an immediate crisis. In the meantime, patients and healthcare providers are adapting in ways both creative and concerning. Online pharmacies promise to fill prescriptions that local pharmacies can't handle, but the quality and legitimacy of these operations varies widely. Some patients are traveling to Mexico or Canada to find medications that are unavailable in the United States. Others are rationing their pills, taking them every other day, or cutting doses in half to make supplies last longer. The most vulnerable patients bear the greatest burden. Elderly Americans on fixed incomes can't afford to drive hundreds of miles searching for medications. Rural patients have fewer pharmacy options to begin with. Uninsured patients, who rely most heavily on generic medications, are hit hardest by shortages. Healthcare advocates are calling for systematic changes. Some propose treating essential medications as public utilities, with government oversight to ensure adequate supply. Others suggest tax incentives for companies willing to manufacture drugs prone to shortage. A few have proposed a national strategic medication reserve, similar to the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, that could be tapped during emergencies. But these solutions, even if implemented, won't help the patients facing shortages today. The crisis is unfolding now, in real time, affecting real people who need their medications to stay alive and functional. The story of prescription drug shortages in America is really a story about priorities. For decades, the focus has been on making medications cheaper, more efficient to produce, and more profitable to sell. The goal was admirable, making life-saving drugs accessible to as many people as possible. But in pursuit of efficiency, the system sacrificed resilience. The result is a pharmaceutical supply chain that works beautifully under normal conditions, but crumbles under the slightest stress. A few production hiccups, a quality control issue, a single company's decision to exit a market, and suddenly millions of Americans can't access medications they've depended on for years. The next phase of this crisis is already beginning. As manufacturers continue to consolidate and production becomes more centralized, the vulnerability only increases. Fewer companies making more medications means bigger impacts when something goes wrong. And in a system stretched this thin, something always goes wrong. What makes this particularly unsettling is how quietly it's happening. Unlike other crises that make headlines and spark congressional hearings, medication shortages unfold patient by patient, prescription by prescription. The diabetic who can't find insulin, the heart patient whose blood pressure medication is backordered, the child whose antibiotic isn't available. Each case feels individual, isolated, but together they represent a fundamental breakdown in one of the most basic expectations of modern life, that the medications you need to stay healthy will be there when you need them. The question facing America now is whether this crisis will be addressed before it becomes catastrophic, or whether medication shortages will simply become another fact of life in a country where healthcare increasingly feels like a luxury rather than a right. For millions of Americans, that question isn't academic. It's a matter of life and death, and the answer may already be sitting empty on a pharmacy shelf near you.